Hello, everyone. It is actually 3 days. Um, in 3 days, it will be 2 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And I remember the day how we woke up from bombing and we were scared together with my children. But for us, actually, this war began on this day 10 years ago with Russia's armed invasion of Crimea. So for 10 years, Ukraine has been fighting against the aggressor, which is 300 times larger in terms of territory and 3.5 times larger in terms of population. And we will not give up because this is our land and our home. So today I will summarize some results of the year 2023 for Ukrainian economy and agriculture. We will talk about grain production and export and its profitability. In 2023, according to the latest estimates of the National Bank of Ukraine, the real GDP of Ukraine grew by 5.7%. This is a recovery growth after a sharp decline of 28.8% in 2022 when the war started. Despite the recovery, GDP is still about a quarter smaller than in 2021. In the first quarter of 2023, GDP was still failing, but it was growing for the remaining 3 quarters. The NBU believes that Ukraine's GDP will grow by 3.6% in 2024 and by 5.8% in 2025. The key prerequisite for economic recovery next year is a reduction of security risk, in particular for agricultural export. Agricultural sector has always been the main driver of Ukrainian economy, making up the largest share of Ukrainian GDP. Since the beginning of the war, its share slightly declined. However, it was the growth of the agricultural export, in particular grain production and export, that ensured the growth of Ukraine's GDP in 2023 compared to 2022. And we hope that despite the war, it will continue to grow next year, although this is a very difficult task considering the lack of profitability of agricultural production. The total amount of direct documented damages caused to Ukraine's infrastructure due to the war reached $156 billion at replacement cost as of January 2024. Disruption to economic flows and production, as well as additional costs associated with the war, are collectively measured as economic losses amounting to around $500 billion. The housing stocks remain in a first place in terms of damage due to the hostilities and systematically shelling. The number of damaged and destroyed residential buildings increases every day, burying civilians under the ruins. Total damages in the agricultural sector amounted $10.3 billion, while losses amounted $69.8 billion. These figures include damage and losses related to destruction of the Kakhovka Dam, the partial or complete destruction of storage facilities, fisheries and aquacultures, perennial crops, livestock, etc. At least 160,000 units of agricultural machinery have been damaged, destroyed, or seized, which is 57% of total damages. The war-induced losses include losses of farm income due to lower and foregone production, lower farm gate prices due to export logistic disruption, higher farm production costs due to higher prices of fertilizers and fuel, the cost of land recultivation after mine release surveying, clearance, and land release operation. There is a new category added, ecology. This is an environmental damage calculated as a damage from air emissions due to the military machinery and war-released pollutions, and are not direct damage to real estate of Ukraine. The restoration of Ukrainian agricultural industry is a long process that depends on many factors, in particular the attraction of investment and financing, the stability of the export routes, and the introduction of new progressive agricultural practices to make it better than it was. According to the latest estimates made by the World Bank last week, that was released the report in a collaboration with United Nations and Ukrainian government, the total recovery and reconstruction needs in the agricultural sector exceeded $56 billion over next 10 years, including $435 million in 2024. To ensure that agricultural sector recovers, drives the overall economic recovery, serves as a decent income source for farmers, and provide food for the for Ukrainian population, several investments are especially important. This includes addressing liquidity constraints, investing in resilience to disaster and climate changes, investing in integrated food energy system, and strengthening the agricultural public institution to effectively support recovery and reconstruction, as well as EU accession. The near doubling of total recovery and reconstruction needs during the last year derives from the increase in total damages and losses during the period. There is a separate project for Kakhovka Dam reconstruction worth $180 million, but it can be done before liberation of Kherson and Zaporizhia Oblast. Cleaning of mines is estimated also separately. The current total cost for the clearance of explosive subject across all Ukraine is around $34.6 billion, among which roughly $15 billion are needed to demine agricultural land. During 2023, Ukrainian sappers examined 274,000 hectares of agricultural land, and this is very good results. It's 58% of what was planned to be done in 4 years. Ukraine is also receiving technical support for demining. And for example, in November, the American company Tetra Tech began demining work in 5 regions of Ukraine. And also the Howard Buffett Foundation provided mechanized demining machines to Ukraine. At the beginning of the war, one of the biggest concerns was loss of the storage capacity that were needed for the coming harvest. Prior the war, Ukraine had around 57 million tons of storage capacity, and by May of 2022, we had only 44 million tons left. Today, the situation is different. Some elevators damaged by shelling resumed their work. Others lost their efficiency due to location. At the same time, many new storage facilities were built in the relatively safe regions and regions more close to the western borders. Currently, about 49.3 million tons are in operation in the country in all regions. Temporary lost, non-working or damaged capacity are accounted at 8 million tons. In terms of quantity, prior the war, we had almost 1,300 of grain elevators. At least 180 of them were damaged or destroyed by Russia or remained on occupied areas. At the same time, at least 65 new storage facilities operate around the country. So our current net loss of grain elevators is 115 units. Actually, mentioned earlier, the Howard Buffett Foundation recently introduced a big project of building a 30,000 tons dry port in Ukraine on the border with Hungary. The dry port features a storage and transportation system for grain, oil, and containers, accommodating both Ukrainian and European rail track gauges, which are different, if you remember. And its capacity is outlined as 5,000 tons of daily transit, 27,000 tons of grain storage, and 4,000 tons of oil storage. The revival of agriculture in the conditions of the war is an extremely challenging task for Ukrainian farmers, and rather positive at first glance indicators of 2023 actually entail significant financial losses due to the low prices of grain and oil seeds in the domestic market, limited export, and complicated logistics. Production of the most grain and oil crops is unprofitable, and indicators for the next year are unlikely to be positive. Currently, achieving the pre-war indicators is out of question since the trends of 2023 show just slightly better dynamics compared to 2022. Production of grain increased by 10% in 2023 compared to 2022 due to favorable condition. However, it is 31% below 2021 indicators. Production of oil seeds increased by 18% to 20.7 million tons. In this case, change in the structure of sown area played a role due to relatively high profitability of oil crop cultivation and presence of domestic processing. However, the production volume remains 10% below the 2021 indicator. Production of sugar beets increased by 29% compared to 2022 and 8% compared to 2021. But sugar beets crops located mainly in central Ukraine and were not physically affected by war. Due to operation of the grain corridor, which allowed the export of ended stocks from the beginning of the war, in 2023, the indicators of the export of agricultural products were higher compared to 2022. The export of grain in 2023 increased compared to 2022 by 11% to 43 million tons. However, it's still 15% less than in 2021. The export of oil seeds decreased by 6% to 7.4 million tons, but it is 95% higher than in 2021. Due to an increase in the production of oil seeds, but also problematic domestic processing due to electricity outages and vegetable oil export complications. At the end of 2023, however, the export of sunflower seeds now is minimal. In 2023, the export of vegetable oil is 30% higher than the previous year and even 10% now higher than in pre-war 2021. As a result of changes in Ukrainian production and export, Ukraine lost some positions on the world market, although we are still the top 10 on many types of agricultural export. Ukraine remains first on sunflower oil and meal markets, and we also became first in sunflower seed export. Ukraine declined from third place to fourth on corn market and to fifth on barley market, but we remained third on rapeseed market and sixth on wheat market even our share decreased. And we improved our position on soybean market, rising from 7th place to 6th. The achievement of top positions in the world agricultural markets took place after the restoration of Ukrainians' independence after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and we can see this evolution over the years. Balanced agrarian policy, the introduction of latest technologies and scientific approaches, as well as hard work of Ukrainian farmers, made it possible to increase the production of grain and oilseeds from 42 million tons in 2001 to 106 in 2021. But since the beginning of the war, there is a significant decrease in grain and oilseeds production and trade. In 2023, Ukraine returned to 2016 level. All the progress made over the last decade was erased. But despite the fact that due to the war, Ukraine lost about 3 to 4 million hectares of land on which it is impossible to conduct agricultural activity, domestic farmers were still able to have high yields on Ukrainian fertile soil. Totally, 82 million tons of grain, legumes, and oilseeds were harvested, and almost 50 million tons exported in 2023. However, expectation for 2024 is much lower. So far, in 2023-24 marketing year, Ukraine exported 27 million tons of grain, including 10.5 million tons of wheat and 14.7 million tons of corn. Even though we had pretty intensive exports since last November, we are still way behind compared to the previous year. Last marketing year, by this time, we already had over 30 million tons of grain exported, and this year is only 27. And the biggest gap is in corn export. Totally, for almost 2 years of the war, Ukraine exported 46 million tons of corn, 27 million tons of wheat, and almost 10 million tons of sunflower oil. Since August 2023, when the Ukrainian humanitarian Black Sea corridor under the protection of Ukrainian armed forces started to operate, we can observe the significant increase of export of all agricultural products. December was the most successful month since March 2023, when Ukraine exported 3.1 million tons of corn, 1.8 million tons of wheat, and 672,000 tons of sunflower oil. In January 24, due to another Russian attack on port infrastructure, it was slight decrease of export of the majority of agricultural products, except for barley and rapeseeds. As for a half of February, Ukrainian agricultural export exceeded 3.6 million tons, and if another half of the month be just as successful, Ukraine can reach its December level of export. Ports play the most important role in Ukrainian export. 74% of agricultural products were transshipped through ports during the wartime. However, before the war, this share was over 90%. And I want to remind that only 3 out of 16 Ukrainian Black Sea ports operate, and 3 Little Danube River ports. Unfortunately, due to constant blockade of the western land cross-border points by pro-Russian Polish farmers, only 140,000 of agricultural products were exported via trucks in January, compared to over 600 per month during the period from August to November of 2022. Recently, they started to block not only roads, but also railways. It was taken a lot of measures since the beginning of the war to increase railway export capacity over 1 million tons of egg commodities per month. And now in January, it dropped to 600,000. I would like to remind that some European countries like Poland continue to ban grain import from Ukraine against the decision of European Commission. Even grain that transited through Poland, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, directed to ports and then to third countries. But nobody listens. Currently, over 4,000 trucks are waiting on Ukrainian borders to deliver grain to the world. And during the last week, the situation on the border with Poland escalated as Polish farmers dumped grain from Ukrainian trucks and yesterday from cargo train transiting to Germany. Since there is less and less support of Ukrainian export through Europe, there is the only way that to continue export, that is to keep developing the new river ports, keep moving vessels out from great Odessa ports, as well as try to return other Ukrainian ports under Ukrainian control and restore their operation. Since August 2023, when the Ukrainian humanitarian Black Sea corridor under the protection of Ukrainian armed forces became operational, more than 660 vessels have already left the port of Great Odessa, transporting about 20 million tons of cargo to 32 countries of the world. And this is not only agricultural products like it was during the grain initiative. In December, Odessa ports reached a record level of 4.3 million tons of grain being transshipped during the wartime, but this is still below of their capacity. At the same time, the decreasing demand for the new river ports due to cheaper and easier logistics from deep Black Sea ports. In January, it was 1 million less than in record August, and that actually August was the month when only export was happening through the new ports. Logistic issues are affecting the geographical structure of Ukrainian export, and in this marketing year, Spain became a leader in wheat import from Ukraine and moved from third place to first. But prior the war, it was very, very little wheat export to Spain, and now this grain goes to re-export through their ports. Egypt and Indonesia were always a leader among importers of Ukrainian wheat, and now they're returning to Ukrainian market after 22-23 decrease, since Russian grain that they started to buy is more expensive. Turkey limited their import from Ukraine, having high ending stocks accumulating during participation in the grain deal, and hoping in its renewing with Russian involvement, but with our good results with exports through Black Sea ports, you can see that we don't really need Russia to be involved. But Turkey do not block Ukrainian vessels' movements through a humanitarian corridor and Bosphorus, but they try to be neutral in this situation. Pakistan and South Korea returned to top 15 list of Ukrainian wheat importers. It was no any wheat export to Pakistan since the war started. Vietnam is a new top player on Ukrainian wheat market. It was just a little export to Vietnam previously. At the same time, Poland and Hungary disappeared from the top 15 list. But also we have a new player, it is Portugal, which actually has a port on the Atlantic coast and can re-export Ukrainian grain. On corn market, China is significantly decreasing the import of corn from Ukraine, replacing with Brazilian. Spain moved to first place. Romania, since October, imported no more than 20,000 tons of corn from Ukraine, and along with Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, they are not anymore on the list of top 15. South Korea returned to Ukrainian corn market, and there is a new player, Cyprus, which has access to Mediterranean Sea. Few words about prices. During the last months, prices for wheat started to decrease on both futures and cash markets. Ukrainian wheat still remains the cheapest, but the price gap has declined. Ukrainian wheat has been traded lately for $203 per ton, just $36 less than American wheat. Lower price makes Ukrainian wheat attractive to millers who would rather buy cheaper Ukrainian wheat than more expensive from own farmers. But this makes agricultural production for Ukrainian farmers unprofitable for second year in a row. Ukrainian feed wheat was traded for $182 per ton, $39 cheaper than Russian. Prices for corn are also decreasing. Ukrainian corn had been traded for $175 per ton. The price gap narrowed from $100 in October to just $10 in February. On a barley market, there is a biggest price gap in between Ukrainian grain and other grains from other origin. So it's been traded for $176 per ton, and Ukrainian barley was almost $60 cheaper than Australian. Very expensive and risky export logistics is another factor that hits liquidity of grain production in Ukraine. However, the freight rates started to stabilize during last 3 months. Rates for the transportation of 6,000 tons of grain from the Danube River ports to all key destinations remained at the stable level of last month. Freights on the direction of Marmara is $27-28 per ton. The east coast of Greece, $31-32 per ton. The Mediterranean, $35-36 per ton. The east coast of Italy, $40-42 per ton. Israel, $37-40 per ton, and Spain, most expensive, $46-48 per ton. Freight rates for the transportation of grain by handysize from deep sea port of Great Odessa to key destinations also decreased from the previous year and remained unchanged during the last months as well. To the Mediterranean coast of Egypt, the price was like $30-31 per ton. Italy, $32-33 per ton. The Mediterranean coast of Spain, $33-35 per ton. Tunisia, $37-38 per ton. Freight for the transportation of wheat and corn by Panamax from deep sea ports of Odessa to China were around $65-66 per ton, to Bangladesh $61-63 per ton. Rates for the transportation of corn by barge to Constanța in Romania amount to $14-15 per ton. So low prices for Ukrainian grain, high transportation costs, and low volume of export led to the decline of revenue from grain export. In 2023, the lowest revenue from wheat export was in July, amounting $145 million. In January, unit revenue per ton of wheat decreased by 21% compared to previous 2023 January, and amounting 170 per ton. The unit revenue from 1 ton of corn in January 2024 decreased in comparison with January 23 by 17% and amounted $161 per ton against 193 last year. Total revenue is also lower this year compared to the previous. As a result, with high production costs, Ukrainian farmers receiving nothing, just losses. The average profitability of grain production in Ukraine in 2021 ranged from $45 per ton for barley to $81 ton for wheat. Oilseeds profitability was very high and ranged from $274 per ton for soybean to $322 for sunflower seeds. However, in 2022, the production of all types of grain and oilseeds was unprofitable. Barley generated loss of $58 per ton, corn $58 per ton. Losses from grain and oilseeds production in 2023 decreased, but for the majority of crop, it remains unprofitable. Barley and rapeseed generated the highest losses per hectare. Only soybean production was profitable in 2023, although soybean is planted only on 11% of total grain and oilseed sown area, so not many farmers benefited from that. Some farmers also had very small profit from sunflower seeds production. So issues with not only export logistic but also import logistic for inputs has also been a big challenges for Ukrainian farmers. Combined with high energy prices in 2022, it caused additional costs for fuel, fertilizers, and chemicals. Fuel supply was especially problematic during spring and summer of 2022. Input prices spiked in 2022 following Russian invasion, and in 2023 the situation for most agricultural inputs has stabilized and prices had declined slightly, but yet they did not reach the pre-war level. And just remember that last year farmers didn't have profits, so they still are not able to buy enough fertilizers and plant protection products just due to lack of money. As a result, the application of inputs, especially fertilizers and chemicals, have significantly reduced. The application rates for seeds actually remains largely unchanged, though their quality changed to worsen. Of course, lower application rates allowed farmers to reduce the cost and decrease their losses. However, this leads to the loss of soil fertility and quality of grain. I have here several examples of cost of agricultural crop production and export in Ukraine. There is no critical changes in seed cost because farmers used farm-safe seeds, and some farmers also received seeds as humanitarian aid from foreign companies. But regarding fertilizers and plant protection products, at the first glance, their cost per hectare in 2022 not increased dramatically, and in 2023 even declined. But this is only because of using inputs in 2022 that were bought in previous season, and also significant decrease in application rates in both 2022 and 2023 that we saw on the previous slide. In such way, farmers decrease their cost, but when the logistic cost to any ports are added, the total cost will higher than price paid for grain. Domestic prices are also lower than production cost. The situation with corn production is pretty similar. Rates for fertilizers and plant protection product application has been reduced significantly, which helped to reduce cost, but there is additional cost for drying corn, which is usually harvested later in the year. Adding cost, high cost of logistics, farmers receive nothing but losses, despite would they sell domestically this corn or abroad. I don't know how long Ukrainian farmers will be able to work in such conditions, having losses year after year. But if farmers will continue to gain losses from production, they will have less assets for the next season, and they will just cut their production or quit at all. This will lead to worsening of food insecurity as for Ukrainian population, as for import-dependent countries. This also will strengthen Russian impact on grain markets and will cause price increase for grain. Here are some results of our new harvest. Unfortunately, it's still not over, as corn remained, like 9% of corn remains on the fields. Currently, we have 58 million tons of grain and legumes harvested. So due to liberation of some territories, we were able to harvest even more than expected of wheat, barley, and peas. 4.7 million hectares of wheat were harvested with average yield of 4.8 tons per hectare, which is even better than in pre-war level. So for the next season of 2024, it is expected that so there are two estimates, like optimistic and pessimistic, and under the optimistic scenario, the sown area on the grain will decrease by just 3% to 10.2 million hectares, and on the oil crops by it's gonna increase by 1% to 8.4 million hectares. But under the pessimistic scenario, the sown area on the grain crops will decrease by 17% to 9.1 million hectares, and as well as oil seeds to 6.9, or by 16% of what we have now. And the sown area, first of all, will decrease in areas close to the front line, as well as the areas far from the seaports and western border of the country, so namely in the eastern and northeastern region.
Antonina, we had a question that I think is kind of relevant just with your discussion right now. It's how does seed from humanitarian aid compared to the seed typically used by farmers? In other words, I think they're asking, is there a significant amount that's coming in via humanitarian aid that helps with planting?
I wouldn't say that that is a huge amount of seeds are coming, but there are some companies like Kaverta and Karteva, Karteva and other companies are providing some seeds, and farmers are limited in how much they can get those seeds. Usually those seeds are provided to small and medium size farms. But of course, if the seeds are better quality, they will perform better, but you need to follow the technology, right, to apply enough fertilizers. So there is this actually yields shows you that it's been some improvement in yield production, in yields per hectare, but it doesn't mean that it was just due to the better seeds. It was also better weather conditions. So it's hard to predict and to answer the question unless you would have two trails and compare.
Good, thanks.
Yeah. So here are our final results for winter planting campaign for 2024 season. And this year we planted winter crops on an area of 5.9 million hectares, which is 34% less than in previous year, but 9% more than in 2022. 200 hectares less of winter wheat was planted compared to what was expected, so that is what we have. So what we expect, that is hard to predict what we will have next year. This is our result for this year in terms of harvest. And as I mentioned earlier, we expect totally have, when we finished our corn, 82 million tons, which is more than previous year, including almost 61 million tons of grain and 21 million tons of oil seeds. And this is our export potential for grain in this season, and we expect to export around 50 million tons, including 41.7 million tons of grain. And our prediction is pretty close. I mean, the Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine is pretty close to what USDA lately published in February. So we'll see how it will perform, but of course it will depend from the operation of Black Sea ports. So here is the latest balance of demand and supply. I will leave it. You have my slides. I just want to point on the ending stocks that they are estimated lower at the level of 4.7 million tons, and actually this is 3% less than in previous balance. So it is hard to predict how harvest and export for the next season will perform, since the area is still occupied, mined, and a lot of uncertainties, and we actually even cannot really plan our sowing campaign on areas close to active hostilities. So, but anyway, we expect that situation will improve. And actually, what I wanted to show, that our tendency shows that if the war wouldn't happen in Ukraine, Ukraine would be already able to have a 5-year average over 100 million tons of grain and oilseeds per year, and export over 80 million tons. This level still can be reached after the occupation and the mining of all territory. As for now, our goal is to keep our 5-year average production at the level of 78 million tons and 50 million tons of export of grain and oilseeds, and improve our average by 92 in next 5 years for production and 60 for export. So this is our expectation, but as I said, everything will depend on the war development. That is it for today. Thank you so much. And if there are some other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Folks, go ahead. If you have questions, put them in the chat for us, please. Be glad to have that. I think we will go ahead and transition and start putting his slides up. Here's a question, Antonina. It says, thanks for the information. Do you think that farmers will change corn sowing for oil seeds in 2024, considering low prices?
Sure, for sure. many farmers already reported that they gonna switch from corn. Some of them already did this last year, and some of them are going to switch to sunflower and also to soybean.